Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Will Devlin, Morrison Dietetic Intern. Coming today to provide this video to you. This is meant for our renal patients. These are individuals that were diagnosed with conditions of CKD, chronic kidney disease, or ESRD, end-stage renal disease. I know when you're diagnosed, there's a lot of changes. It can be very overwhelming. The purpose and objective of this video is really just to inform and to instruct and help. It provides insight into what these conditions are, how they manifest, how to manage and treat these conditions, what foods to eat, how much of those respective foods to eat, and then finally some cooking tips at home and recipes provided to you. Really just again to show you that life goes on, not to be overwhelmed. There are some changes that are going to take place, but more than anything, you could absolutely live a very healthy and happy life. And I hope that you enjoy it. So what is CKD? CKD stands for chronic kidney disease. And long story short, that's the gradual progression and loss of kidney function. So there's different stages to CKD. There's stages 1 through 5, 5 being the most severe. And we'll touch base on this momentarily, but when you're diagnosed with stage 5, that's also referred to as ESRD, or end-stage renal disease. That's the most severe stage. That's also when you get into the discussion topic of dialysis or renal replacement therapies. We can see here as well our GFR value. That's our glomerular filtration rate. That's a really imperative piece of biochemical data. When you're being consulted by your nephrologist or kidney care team, they actually rely on that value very heavily. That's how they diagnose you and pinpoint you into what respective stage of CKD you might be in. And that gives them insight in regards of your overall kidney function. And we can see different conditions listed here: diabetes mellitus, cardiovascular disease, hypertension. Those are the leading causes of the manifestation of CKD. And that just really goes to show with the human body in terms of anatomy and physiology, everything's interconnected. You think about comorbidities, if there's impairment or damaging of one organ or several organs or different systems of the body, that could lead to the damaging and impairment of other organs and systems as well in the body. So everything is interconnected. So to speak more on ESRD, ESRD stands for end-stage renal disease. And again, that's the most severe stage of CKD at stage 5. So things have gone so horribly wrong and awry that the overall functionality of your kidneys has greatly been compromised and inhibited. So it's only operating at roughly 10 to 15%, so very minimum amount of function. So long story short, your kidneys can no longer do their job, and you need to rely on treatment options. They're referred to as renal replacement therapies. Once you're diagnosed, you're commonly referred to what's called a nephrologist, which is a fancy term for a physician who specializes in kidney care. And we'll get more into this momentarily, but you would discuss what the best individualized treatment option would be for you. There's different forms of dialysis. It could be hemodialysis or peritoneal, and there's a lot of factors at play that would determine that. But that could be whether or not you go into a dialysis clinic on a routine basis 3 times a week, or maybe even do treatment options at home in the privacy and comfort from your home or your bedroom. So I wanted to speak more in regards to the management and treatment of these conditions. Both are very complex conditions, CKD and ESRD. I wanted to point out that it's very much a multifactorial treatment. It's not just medical or just nutritional. It's both. They're both very significant and important. You think about everything that's entailed in terms of the level of responsibility. So that involves actually going to consistently to have your renal replacement therapies done, your dialysis, having those conducted in a routine manner, eating the right foods in the right amounts, and we'll highlight that more on that later. But there's a lot going on. It's very complex. The conditions themselves are complex in origin and nature, so it makes sense that the management and treatment would be as well. We did highlight the dialysis options there. We talked about HD, hemodialysis, and peritoneal dialysis as well. There's a third option there as well. I put this on here: kidney transplant. To be a transplant patient, they do put you on a list. It does take some time. Statistically speaking, about only a third of the transplant patients actually receive the organ. Out of all the organs that are transplanted, Kidney transplants are the most common among them all. And really, regardless of what options of treatment that you do receive, whether it's any combination of dialysis or kidney transplant, the overall goal is the same, which is simply just to prevent the progression of further damage. We talked about those stages earlier. We want to prevent you from progressing to a more advanced stage of damage for the kidneys. So let's take a second to get into what dialysis is. Now, we highlighted different forms of dialysis previously, HD and PD. Regardless of which one you're receiving and which one's the best fit for you, let's discuss what the process entails in terms of the overall treatment. So I know it's very complex, but to break it down, simply put, it basically just filters your blood. So it's a treatment option that is doing the work and job of your kidneys. In terms of overall kidney function, renal function, things have declined so significantly that your kidneys can no longer filter your blood, which is why we treat you with dialysis. So the process and mechanisms by how that actually works are done by diffusion, osmosis, and ultrafiltration. So what that means is in your body, in your blood, you have these charged particles called ions. You think of electrolytes like potassium, calcium, sodium. So in the machine there, we can see our photo at the bottom. That's of someone receiving HD hemodialysis. We could see next to the screen there's a long, narrow tube. It looks like a part you see on a vacuum cleaner. That's actually an artificial kidney. So what your kidneys typically do is, in the average individual, they have 5 to 6 pints of blood. That just gives you an idea of how much blood volume you have in your body. Now, typically, in a healthy person, your kidneys filter all of your blood about every 30 minutes. So they work very hard. So the turnover is really high. So that's what the machine is doing. It's filtering your blood for you. So utilizing these processes, that's how it's able to do that. And they have a solution in the machine. It's called a dialysate. The slang term is just they call it baths. So they can actually, this is really imperative and neat. They can customize the dialysis solution from patient to patient. It's very much individualized for higher degree and quality of treatment for patients. So you could think about, they could look at your biochemical data, like your potassium is a really common one, and they actually have different ranges of baths, dialysate baths to provide and put in the machine, depending on what your serum potassium level is. There's K1, 2, and 3. So K2 would be the standard one. If they were to look at your lab values prior to treatment, they could see that your potassium levels are really high. They could select the K1 bath, and that would be a better option for you, because what's going to happen is through osmosis, it's going to leach additionally more potassium out of your blood, so we can move that further or closer, hopefully within whatever the recommended range would be. So you can move and enter into that normal and healthy range. So long story short, that's the gist of dialysis and how it works. In terms of selecting which one's the best fit for you, that's a discussion between you and your nephrologist. For hemodialysis, you generally go to a dialysis clinic 3 times a week, typically Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Some clinics and organizations are open all week long, so you can go on different days, maybe Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Some are open on the weekends as well. So that's going to vary. Now PD, peritoneal dialysis, that's a really neat one. Your body's actually the filter. The peritoneal lining or cavity that's in your abdomen, you don't need a machine because your body's actually the filter. And that's really convenient as well. That's something you could do every night from the comfort of and convenience of your home. So again, in discussing the management and treatment of these complex conditions, it very much is multifactorial. It's not just medical, but also nutritionally significant. So a term that you're probably going to hear time and time again, whenever someone is administered nutritional advice or guidance in a clinical setting, a term they like to use is MNT. That just stands for medical nutrition therapy. So in terms of MNT, that's important. There's never a time where it's not of benefit or significance, especially in regards to CKD or ESRD. You want to start right away. I just wanted to highlight some common problems, nutritionally speaking: malnutrition, cardiovascular disease, bone and mineral disorders. A key one among that is what's referred to as renal osteodystrophy, and finally anemia. That's just low iron. We can see the nutrients of concern. In our next slide, we're going to go more into detail on these, but we could see our macronutrients that derive energy. So protein's really significant. That could also be fat and carbohydrates. And then our micronutrients, we think about what we discussed earlier, our charged particles, our electrolytes, potassium, calcium, phosphorus, and then our sodium and fluids. That's really imperative because you probably will be on a fluid restriction as well. So we do want to be mindful of that. So our micronutrients, they primarily serve as our coenzymes or co-substrates. They help us to break down and derive energy from our macronutrients. So if we do have any other deficiencies, we want to make sure that we're aware of those so that we can supplement them. That way we meet the quota on that as well, and we have no gaps in our nutrition. So here are our macronutrients and micronutrients of concern. I know we just looked at these in our previous slide, so I'm not going to go through each one. I really wanted to provide a glance in terms of our dietary amounts that are recommended. They do vary. And most importantly, just make you aware that the amounts, I know the numbers, when we look at these, we see some big numbers here. We see numbers like 3,000, 4,000, 2,000, 1,000. That might sound like a lot, but it's really not. The amounts, they do add up very rapidly. And all this really points to the fact of the matter that we really want to be cognizant of which foods contain these nutrients and also how much. So grocery shopping 101, what I'd recommend first is to eat prior to going grocery shopping. Now the reason behind this is to eliminate impulsive buying. You think about when you're really, really hungry, you haven't eaten in a long time, several hours, maybe you're hangry. That's going to lead to impulsive buying. When you're super hungry, all food looks great, right? So we want to make sure that we eat prior to going grocery shopping, and that will lead to us, our mental faculties will be in good standing, and that will lead to us making more informed decisions with the foods that we do choose to purchase and buy. And also, you want to make sure that you have a list. You want to have a game plan of what you need to buy prior to actually going grocery shopping, and you want to use the list too. That's really important. You could keep the list on your refrigerator or in your car. If you're like me and your phone is always on you, there's actually apps you can download as well. The best part of which is they're all free. Click the link below. It actually walks you through some really helpful grocery shopping apps that are right on your phone. You could add to the list throughout the course of the week. And then when you go to the store to buy groceries, it's right there in your pocket. So previously we discussed what nutrients are causes of concern and also the associated amounts that are recommended for each one. So in regards to grocery shopping, a good rule of thumb is to shop the outer perimeter. And the reason why they recommend this is so that you choose fresh foods. We think about all the foods that are located in the center of the grocery store. They're typically higher in preservatives. What we really want to watch out for and limit our intake of is really just food additives. With the food additives, they really spike up the phosphorus content of the foods. So we do want to be aware of that and cautious. Also, read the food labels too. If you ever forget, you pick up a new food or there's a sale, there's BOGO sales, read the food label. That'll provide a lot of insight into whether or not that food is appropriate for you to consume or maybe how much. If you're a little bit hazy or rusty in regards to reading food labels or just flat out don't know, please visit the link right here and that will walk you through on how to actually do that. And for any and all questions in regards to what foods are appropriate when you're trying to abide by a renal diet, always consult your renal dietitian. Now, cooking at home is not only a healthy alternative, but it's also a great way to save a lot of time and money. You could do what's called batch cooking or meal prep for the week. If you want to cook up more than one meal at a time, maybe during the week, weekdays are really crazy and hectic and busy. You're juggling a lot between the kids and work and school. That's a great opportunity to prepare healthy meals ahead of time to where you can just reheat and then serve. Also for our condiments, there's usually a lot of sodium in those and food additives and preservatives. It's a great opportunity to switch over to seasonings. I know in the hospital we use what's called Mrs. Dash. Instead of table salt, sodium chloride, it's potassium chloride. So you don't have to worry about the sodium at all. Fresh herbs and spices are always a great additive as well. They taste great. People like to have their own little gardens at home they can pick from. That's a healthy alternative. Something to be aware of as well is what they call portion distortion. This is something our whole country really could benefit from and work on. That's when you eat too much. You tend to overindulge. We do have limited amounts for those respective nutrients we discussed earlier. So a good recommendation is just to make sure that we use smaller plates and cups and bowls. That way we don't go overboard with how much that we do consume. And just to highlight some final cooking tips, want to make everyone aware. I know that when patients are diagnosed with these conditions, CKD or ESRD, understandably, it could be very overwhelming, and a lot of changes do ensue. Just want to point out to you, make you aware that not all of those changes have to be negative or bad. It's an opportunity to learn and to grow and to live a healthier life. Don't be afraid to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. I would strongly encourage you to try new foods and dishes that either you've never had before, maybe not in a long time. If you do try new foods and dishes, I guarantee you you will find some that you do like, maybe previously that you didn't like or didn't think that you would like. But if you do go on a try, you'll discover that you do like them. I would also recommend that you keep all the recipes that you do try and love in a binder or folder that you can keep in your kitchen. If you're big like me, you can keep them on your phone as well. That way you have easy access to them. That is so hugely helpful and beneficial later on, especially during the week when you're juggling work and with school and things are hectic and busy. You have a bank of recipes there that you know that you've had and you like, that you can whip up really fast for yourself and for your family. So in regards to kidney-friendly recipes, I have some resources listed here. Some big companies like DaVita and Fresenius. A lot of recipes available to you. Don't be afraid to manipulate these. Make them your own. If there are additional ingredients that you want to incorporate or mix up or change, maybe you make it one way this time. Next week you want to take the same recipe and make it a little bit different. Mix it up. That's totally fine. Also, don't be afraid to manipulate the amounts as well. If you are going to do some meal planning, you're going to make more for later on or for the week. You could make larger amounts. It will save time. Also, it's very convenient as well. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I'm Will Devlin, Morrison Health Dietetic Intern. I really hope this video was helpful and informative to you. Again, thank you for watching. Take care and God bless.